What's the creepiest or scariest thing you've seen, but no one believes you? Didn't see it, but heard it. My friends and I got a cheap set of walkie-talkies from Walmart and were playing around with them in the middle of the day. There's a bit of silence as we're trying to figure out the volume, and out of nowhere, there's a male voice saying, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday." That comes through all of our walkie-talkies, and it definitely sounds like it's from one of those aircraft headsets. We try to answer back, but there's no response. I called non-emergency, but they said there weren't any reports of distressed aircraft or ships, and even if there were, they couldn't do anything about it. Alternatively, a couple of months later I saw a plane with an engine on fire go over my campus, but apparently no one else did. Growing up, I had a friend named Adam. He was never able to come out during the day, only right before all us kids had to go home for the evening. Adam lived a few houses over, in a house with an overgrown yard. I met his parents once. They were very strange, didn't smile, and obviously didn't want me there. I remember Adam telling me that he was sick. That's why he couldn't play that much. He was a small boy, pale with dark hair. Eventually, Adam stopped showing up altogether, and I eventually moved on, though I do remember going to his house a couple of times to see if he could come play, and his dad just gave me this look before closing the door in my face. Later in life, I asked my sister if she remembered him. She doesn't, and according to my parents, that house was empty the entire time we lived there. I don't know who Adam was. I don't know why I so vividly remember him and his parents. And as far as I can tell, he wasn't real. And yet I have perfect memories of him and his parents. When I was 7 or 8, I would have a recurring nightmare that one of my dolls came to life, played with me, and then would try to pull me into my closet with her. I'd follow her into the closet at first, but then she'd show me this little door at the back of the closet, and my heart would start to race. I didn't know what it was about that door, but I knew something bad would happen if I went through it. I'd start to struggle and try to pull away, but the doll was too strong and would start pulling me through the door. At this point in the dream, I'd always wake up screaming. The worst part was I had night terrors, so sometimes I'd wake up standing next to my closet. Every night before bed, I'd make my parents make sure there wasn't a little door at the back of my closet. There never was. Anyway, I was talking to my mum the other day and this dream came up. I'm laughing about it and how ridiculously paranoid I was about dolls and that closet, but my mum gets really quiet. She tells me the creepy part of the dream wasn't the doll. It was the fact that there used to be a little door at the back of the closet, but when I was 1 year old, they remodeled the house and put a wall where the door used to be. There's no way I could have remembered that door, but years later, I kept dreaming about it. None of my friends believe this story, but I swear it's true. I grew up on a 2-acre home with plenty of trees and room for an 8-year-old to run around. Our house also was heated in winter by a wood fireplace, so we would periodically cut down one of our own trees to save money. Well, for about 2 years, there was a stump less than a foot tall near the house, and at least once a day, without fail, I would see someone standing on the stump. Usually it was out the corner of my eye, but once or twice I looked directly at him. I always looked away quickly, because it startled me, and he was gone. But my sister says she experienced the same thing. Nothing ever came of it though. This happened to me last year, and I fully understand why no one believed me because it sounds ridiculous. Every morning I need to wake up at 5 a.m. to get the 5:30 bus to the train station to go to university. I had to be there by 8 a.m, but I like to get there half an hour early. To get to the bus stop, I have to walk down this bike path and under this bridge to get to this quiet back street road. There is fuck all light on the bike path. That street is dead quiet. The right side of the road is a continuation of the bike path, and the left is a normal footpath with a long green hedgerow. One morning, I was standing there, waiting for a bus, and this old woman comes walking out from under the bridge. I didn't see her at first because, as I said, it was pitch black on the bike path. She crosses the road and walks up to me. She asked me if I knew where X road was. I turned to point in the direction of the road she was looking for. I turned back, and she was gone. This old woman, who was walking at a snail's pace, disappeared within 3 seconds. My neighbour was dying of a heart condition about 6 years ago. He knew he was, so he was giving away his valuables to people he trusted with them. Neighbour gave me his tackle box. He loved to fish. I would see him come home from fishing every day, and he'd just sit on his porch and skin fish. I just put the tackle box in my closet and didn't really do anything with it since I don't fish. Anyways, soon after, he passed away in his home. Exactly a week after that, I woke up to the tackle box at the foot of my bed. Weird, but my stepdad likes to dick around. I figured it was him, so I put it back. The next morning, I wake up. It's at the foot of my bed again. So I asked my stepdad what the deal was, and he had no idea what I was talking about. To test this, I put the tackle box in a spot that he wouldn't find, nor would he attempt to get it. Under my bed, all the way at the back against the wall. I put stuff in front of it to conceal it. Next morning, nothing. Okay, I guess it was him. Didn't give much of a thought after that. 3 days pass. I wake up one morning, and there it is, at the foot of my bed. Fuck. Now I'm starting to freak out. So I did what any rational person would, and I went fishing with it. After I went fishing, I put the tackle box away, and it hasn't moved since then. It's still there. Just after high school, maybe 6 months or so after 9/11, I was a van driver who drove the meals for Meals on Wheels to the place where they get packaged up and taken for home delivery. Anyway, the delivery van only had an AM/FM radio, and I was listening to 92.5 FM, when all of a sudden, the station cuts out, and a transmission that I can only describe as an American version of a numbers station began playing. It was seemingly random numbers, followed by a long period of the same phrase repeated over and over again. The phrase was, "They took the crosstown bus," over and over again. None of the other drivers heard it, but man was it creepy to hear. Eventually, the regular radio station came back on, and they never mentioned anything about it. This was 4 years ago. As I was walking on the sidewalk on a busy afternoon, I saw a suspicious boy or man about 18 years old. He was 10 meters away and walking what it looked like toward me. I kept my eyes on him despite the fact that he wasn't looking directly at me. His eyes were roaming, jumping from an object to an object. As we approach one another, half a meter away from each other, he takes out a knife and tries to stab me in my left side. He wasn't really fast, so I easily dodged it and immediately turned to see who he is or if he's trying to stab me again. To my surprise, he continues walking, and after a couple of meters, he stops, turns around, smiles, and gives me a thumbs up. Then he continues walking in the opposite direction. To this day, I don't know who he was, what he wanted, and even my family doesn't believe me, because if someone wanted to stab you, you can't stop him. You aren't experienced enough to dodge it like that, and something of that kind. I spent one summer in high school living with my aunt and uncle and keeping their 7-year-old daughter for them during the day while they worked. I was up late one night watching TV in the living room. The living room was right off of the kitchen, separated only by an L-shaped bar. I saw my cousin, out the corner of my eye, walk down the hallway from her room and into the kitchen. It was way past her bedtime, so I told her she needed to go back to bed. When I didn't hear her answer, I got up and walked around the bar into the kitchen. There was no one there. I checked under the bar to see if she was hiding from me, and there was no one there, and nowhere else she could have gone from the kitchen. I walked down the hallway to her room, and she was fast asleep, snoring. So there was no way it was her. It baffled me and freaked me out, because if I didn't see my cousin, who was the little girl that walked into the kitchen? Several years later, I was talking to my aunt and she nonchalantly brings up the ghost in her house. I laughed it off and she said, "No, I'm serious. We have a ghost. Your uncle and I have both seen her and heard her. We call her Giggles because we hear her giggling. We usually only see her in the hallway before she disappears." All of a sudden, I remembered the disappearing girl in the kitchen. I asked her what the ghost looks like. She said she had blonde hair with braids and wore a white dress. My cousin is blonde. On the night in question, I thought I'd seen my cousin in a nightgown walk down the hallway, but apparently it was the ghost that resides in my aunt's house. As a Marine, I used to have the graveyard patrol shift at the Beirut Bombing Memorial. Part of the memorial is dedicated to a veterans cemetery. Oddly enough, I never got freaked out being completely alone in a remote cemetery in the middle of the night, surrounded by dense woods on all sides. It was actually kind of peaceful, to be honest. However, one night I was patrolling near the perimeter fence where some of the oldest headstones are, when I heard the sound of a woman humming. I followed the sound and noticed a light glowing through the vines and brush of a large tree. As I approached, I could literally feel my hair beginning to lift, as if there was an electric current in the air. I pushed aside the brush, and what I saw nearly took my breath away. It was an old, weathered headstone with a large cross etched into the marble, only the cross was glowing a bright, vivid blue, like a neon bulb. The humming was also suddenly much louder and had a weird plurality to it, like it was coming from hundreds of voices at once. Needless to say, I freaked the fuck out. I screamed like a little girl and sprinted back to the parking lot. I radioed the guard who was supposed to relieve me and forced him to come early, then spent the rest of my shift in the cab of his truck. I don't think he believed me, but he stayed in his truck and didn't go out on patrol until the sun was fully up. A few days later, I worked up the nerve to return to the grave, during the day of course. As I suspected, in the light of day it was a completely mundane headstone. There was no name, only the aforementioned cross. I ran my hands over the stone and checked to see if maybe there was some sort of hidden light source or solar panel, but no, it was just plain, solid, unremarkable stone. The humming was gone too. I eventually returned to my normal shift, but never again experienced anything out of the ordinary. I never learned whose grave that was either, but I find myself thinking about it from time to time. It certainly sounds absurd when I say it out loud, and I suppose it could have been a hallucination or trick of my tired brain, but I don't believe it was. I think it was real, a ghost or spirit of some sort, but I don't think it was malevolent at all.